built the fort to protect them. Well, we've got some witches here, and we've got lots of people and lots of scary people and lots of horrible things going on, and you're going to have the fright of your life. We've got storytellers, and we've got ghosts, and we've got horrible things, we've got gooey things, and we've even got a man running around like a lunatic with a chainsaw, which frightened everybody tonight.
The first time I came in here, it was August. I went downstairs, myself and Alma, and the door closed, and there was no lights, and it was spooky and eerie, and there wasn't even anything done with it at the stage. It's a great location. It's a shame they don't use the building for other events, so hopefully this might be the start of it, getting things going and getting going. It's ideal for Halloween. You know, you've got the eeriness, you've got the darkness, you've got the beautiful space outside, as you can hear the screams and everything else. So yeah, it's an ideal venue for Halloween.
Good evening. Let me take us back 420 years.
There was people jumping out. Oh, it was so freaky. You walk through and you go around this corner, there was people jumping out and pushing you.
Yes, it seems it's educational, and as well as the fright aspect of it, like it's really played on really well at Halloween.
And a man told us a story about why you dress up at Halloween. You dress up at Halloween so you just disguise yourself from the fairies.
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic use for it. It's a bit of shame not to use it when it's on your doorstep, and you know, even in this sort of time of the year, it can be brought to life.
We're here in Lough Swilly, and Lough Swilly was actually formed 10,000 years ago during the last ice age. So it's actually a glacial fjord, and it's 40 kilometres long, and it has always been a very, very safe harbour. And throughout history there's been a lot of different activity here. Now in 1798 England was at war with France, and also at the same time there was a group which had rose up in rebellion against British rule, and that group was called the United Irishmen, and they were led by a man called Wolfe Tone. So Wolfe Tone went to the French government and persuaded them to send troops to attack England, but to land here in the north of Ireland. They were intercepted off Tory Island by the British, and some of the ships got away, but 3 ships were arrested and brought into Buncrana. And among the arrested sailors was Wolfe Tone. So Wolfe Tone was put in chains and he was sent to Dublin to be executed, but he actually cut his own throat and died of the wounds. So after that then, the British government were very afraid that another invasion force would attempt to land here in Lough Swilly. So in the early 1800s they decided to build 6 defensive forts here on Lough Swilly.
Rathmullan, being the 6th, was completed in 1813 at a cost of £1,800. It was built in 6 months. It's an extraordinary feat. I understand that the stone was imported from Scotland, even though granite is widely available in North Fannet, because the quarries here at that time were not set up to produce large quantities of stone in the time available. In this corner over here, strangely enough, there were toilets, officers' toilet, men's toilet and women's toilet, which is very strange when you think of it. I don't know how that got in here, but there is a plan showing that there were women's toilets. There was a turf shed. On this side here, there were, that referred to as an arcade. There was a guard room. In the centre here, there was a furnace, and that was for making the cannonballs red hot, so that when fired into a ship, they would set it on fire and hopefully explode the magazine of the ship. And then, of course, you had the 5 24-pounder cannon inside those walls on raised platforms, and you would have had little pyramids of cannonballs stacked beside each cannon, ready to go. And on the roof then, there were 2 large howitzers, guns that fired their shot high into the air so that they lobbed down onto the decks of ships rather than into the sides as the ordinary cannon will do. So there were essentially 7 guns here, 2 on the roof, 5 on the walls, and between these and the fort in Inch Island, you had 12 guns covering this narrow in the loch, which is about a mile and a half between here and the fort at Inch. So there wasn't much chance of a ship getting up unobserved, and perhaps not even getting up at all.
Normally, in the design, the downstairs level was kept for ammunition and provisions, and then on the next floor you had the where the men lived. So you would probably have had an officer and a complement of maybe 25 men. And then at the very top, you would have had a gun. So this is the blockhouse, and this is the battery. The battery means it was a sort of a fortification. The battery was built in the early 1800s, and then it would have been used up until about the middle of the 1800s. Really after that, then there was never any further attempt at an invasion here in Lough Swilly, and it wouldn't have been used as much. But then in 1914, at the outbreak of World War I, the Grand Fleet of Great Britain was stationed at Scapa Flow, which is off the coast of Scotland. And the Admiral of the fleet, Admiral Jellicoe, felt that it wasn't safe enough from a German attack by submarines. So he moved the Grand Fleet here into Lough Swilly in October 1914.
And at that time, of course, there was huge activity here. There were about 40 ships between cruisers, destroyers and repair ships. There were barrage balloons floating over the fort here, not as defences against aircraft as they would have been in the Second World War, but simply as observation platforms, so that officers in baskets under the barrage balloons could see down the loch and spot any periscopes or anything like that coming up. But in due course, the fleet went back to Scapa Flow.
When they came here to Rathmullan, what the top brass decided to do was they got anybody who around the coast that had yachts or sailing boats, and they literally had regattas every day to occupy the men. They also walked them around the whole countryside as well. That was a big feature, because my grandmother used to say officers used to come out to walk out, and they lived 4 miles away from here, and they would go out there and they would give them tea, and that was in the 1914 war. And they also built a recreation hall over at where the Alexander Terrace along the seafront there. It was a demountable building, and then eventually a man called Mr. Callahan bought it and after the war he took it and put it up on Pier Road, and that was one of the first dance halls were in the county. Towards the end of the Civil War, the Republicans had retreated to the battery over at Inch Island. Any of them that were around the Inishowen Peninsula, apparently they had more or less retreated in there. And a battalion of the Irish Army were sent to Rathmullan, and they were billeted, as far as I know, up in the huts that had been vacated by the Naval Service, the British Naval Service, up in what's now the football field. They were using the battery as an observation post to keep an eye on the movements of the Republicans in the battery over in Inch Island. I'm presuming, I'm not too sure, but the tank would have had to be gone by that stage. Well, of course, it wouldn't have covered the whole building, but it was higher than there was an oil tank in the battery yard that had been put there by the British Navy to put oil in, but it was never used, and then it was taken down again. But I wouldn't be sure of the time sequence, whether that was done before the Civil War or after the First World War ended. There's the only thing that I've read about any shots being fired were a report by a priest who went across ostensibly to hear confessions, apparently over in the battery in Inch Island, were being shot at by soldiers in the battery in Rathmullan, but whether that's true or not, I don't know. But it's stated anyway. There hadn't been a fishery in here before 29. There may have been some, but nothing very much. But the big fishings then were way down off the south coast, and some it was known as a black gut got into the herring shoals. As a result, they couldn't be cured. The reason they were catching them, they were curing them then to export them, and that couldn't be done. And they just literally upped stakes and came, the fleets and everything came up here and brought barrels and salt and everything with them, and set up here and they used the battery just for storing there was gutting done in it as well, all right, but it was mostly for storage of barrels. The gutters, as they were nearly all women, and they were from the west of the county, because there wasn't a tradition here then of gutting fish, whereas there would have been down by the west of the county, and a lot of those they came here and did that. But whenever they had them gutted, then but it was local men who packed them into barrels with salt, and then they were all gathered together, and then ships came, and they mostly went to Russia. The ones that were caught here were sent to Russia. But you see, it had, I would just vaguely remember them, maybe 4 or 5 ships still coming in about 1936, 37, and then they stopped altogether. Well, then the war came on, and of course all that was lost.
Grew up as a youngster, right beside the sea, and one of the places where we used to play in was in the actual battery here. We used to be able to walk around the ramparts, but also that we used to be able to actually get into the building, which is right here on my right. It was quite a difficult task, and although no one admitted that they were afraid to go in there, I can tell you that a lot of us were very scared. And it was only in latter years, when we spoke to each other as adults, that we realised just how scared we were. Someone tells a story once that my father was a local schoolmaster, and he looked out the window to see one of his kids who should have been at school, cycling around the top of the battery when he should have been at school. I think he paid the price for it later on. And then once you were up there, you had to sort of execute the same maneuver to get down again. So it was a big experience to be able to go in there in those days as a kid, and exciting and daunting.
Well, how it came to be in the possession of the committee at home was, as you know, I was in the hotel at the time, and a man from Failte came, I can't remember his name now, and it was 1960 was the year, and he said that they had some money, £1 million for the whole country. That was the money they had to spend for starting to develop tourism in 1960. And he said he would spend, I think it was £2,000 here in Rathmullan. So Master Gallagher, Frank Gallagher, and myself met him, and we brought him round. We showed him the battery. The airfield was for sale at that stage. What we now call the airfield, the football field, and that area up there. So he bought that, and he bought the battery for, I think it was £500 at the time, and I think £1,500 he spent buying the land up there. But there was never any. I think it was sometime in the 80s. My wife Anne and I were up at the launch of a book called Peoples of Ireland in Belfast by Patrick Doherty, who was head of the BBC in Northern Ireland. And at that launch, Cardinal Fee was there because he was one of the contributors to the book. So Patrick introduced Anne and I to him. Patrick, of course, is from Rathmullan too, and he introduced us, and we got round to discussing. Of course, he was a great authority on the flight of the Earls, so particularly O'Neill's. So the idea, that's where the idea came from, the idea of having an exhibition in the thing. That's where it started. So, but it was a few years then before, it wasn't until 1990, it was maybe 8 or 9 years after that before we got around to having it, you know.
I was a DJ for 40 years. Long nights and early mornings. And I finished in 2009. Started in 69 and played music until 2009. So we had to have a transit van, we had to lift all the speakers, and it took 2 or 3 people to the whole show. Nowadays they have a little laptop and they can do the whole show and just push a button, you know. But I was in the old vinyls for the early part of my career, and then I went on to CDs after that. And you carried boxes of stuff in, you know, but I would do it all again. The success of a good DJ is you play the numbers that your dancers want you to play, even if you don't like them. And once you play them, you'll be successful. Way back in the 80s, you may say that the Beatles come to the end, but you had all the good bands. The show bands were starting to fade away. The Irish show bands, which were very good, 60s, sound of the 60s into the 70s, and into the 80s, you had all the good American, you know, Bee Gees, all those good numbers. If you played the good lively numbers, that's what the people wanted, and that's what you played. And a big difference in the music today in compared to the music that I played is we used to play slow numbers. You played 3 numbers, 10 minutes, slow numbers. Now there's no slow numbers at all, it's all fast, like, you know. We didn't do it inside in the battery itself, either on the ground floor or the first floor. There was a small kind of a little ledge as you go in on the right hand side. We used to pull all the equipment up there, and then I could play down to them on the courtyard. So they just danced away and frolicked or whatever they're on in the courtyard. Then if the weather was bad and we knew it was going to rain a lot, what we would do is we would get a small marquee, and we pitched that in the centre of the courtyard, and that covered the bad weather. Well, some of the events, you're talking about 150, you know. We had one event there where I played at in the year 2000, which is a little bit later on, but it was a disco as well. But we had Pig on the Spit, and we had 300 at that, and we had a small marquee. And the pig was 275 pounds, I can remember. It took 4 men to carry it in. And the talk at the time was it was the first pig in the spit in 200 years that was cooked in the battery. And that was a brilliant night. That was one of the best nights. You can always remember the good night. That was one of the best nights in the battery. That was in July 2000.
Rathmullan Fort, always known as the Battery, was originally, I think, given into the ownership of Bord Failte, and they in turn passed ownership to Donegal County Council. Some years ago, a company, a local area development company, was set up in Rathmullan and acquired a lease from from Donegal County Council, so that it's now available to the people of the town for development. Some years later, after the local development company had been set up, funds were obtained to include a museum, in effect, an interpretive centre, commemorating the flight of the Earls. And there were certain alterations made to the building at that time for that purpose. As the years went by, it became obvious that the nature of the building was unsuitable for the purpose for which it was being used. These old stone buildings are designed, in effect, to allow the wind to whistle through, because they have very, very dense stone. You get a terrible lot of condensation on them, with the inevitable consequential effects on museum exhibits. So that some years ago, the interpretive centre was withdrawn, and essentially since then the building has been unused.
Well, there's a lot of ideas, and the Way Forward group, as you know, is formed into a number of focus groups which are looking at various aspects of developing Rathmullan. There's maybe 3 aspects to the battery that have to be developed, and each of them brings their own sort of complications. First of all, there's the walkway around the battery. That could probably be developed fairly quickly, because you would just need a bridge or a walkway from the existing car park, from the, say, the putting green, and you could open up access around the walkway and over to this side of the battery, and that would make you a beautiful walk for people on a summer's day. Then there's a courtyard which can be opened up for outdoor events, and the courtyard is there, it's existing, it's ready to go. We just need to get the proper processes in place and use the courtyard. And then ultimately the prize would be to actually put the building to use. But for all those potential uses, we have to develop specific projects. There is funding available once we have specific projects, and the focus groups are working on that. So we think the first thing that will happen will be that we can open up the site for a walkway, so at least we can make it accessible so people can appreciate the site for what it is.
The courtyard itself is so big that a lot of people still think it could be used for something like, it's so near the water's edge, something like a fish pool or, you know, aqua centre like that. Because there's nothing really on the northwest coast. You've got to go to Dublin, there's one in Belfast, there's one in Galway, one in Cork, but there's nothing really up in the northwest area. And that could be an idea, because a lot of people are interested in fishing, and a lot of people eat fish now more than they used to. So it probably some kind of an aquarium like that.
It would be lovely to be able to bring people into the different levels. And then, of course, you have that fabulous stairway, which brings you up to the viewing area up the top. And there's an absolutely gorgeous view from that. And I think people, if they could come in and get the feel of the place and understand the history, and then to be able to walk up to the viewing area and see where the guns were positioned and everything, I think that would be it would be a fantastic experience and would really add to Rathmullan as an attraction. Hopefully down the road as well, maybe to put up some figures and storyboards which could explain better as well the history of the building, because I just think it has stood now for over 200 years. There's no chance of it falling down. It's in great shape, and it would be a great attraction for the area, and I would just love it for my tours as well.
My own personal hope, and I think it's the hope of many, is that the building will be used in two ways. First of all, the yard, which is a very, very valuable open space, enclosed, with magnificent views over Lough Swilly, can be used for outdoor events and for, what would I call it, various types of cultural events such as drama, music, dance. A circus would be great here. But that's one use. The other, of course, is that the building itself, I think, should be reinstated as a battery.
The children would have put down their wishes for what they would like to see in Rathmullan more of, from a child's need and from a child's perspective. Yes, it was mentioned, the battery, that they would like to see it used in a way that, you know, is going to bring more tourists into the town and, you know, keep our heritage live and well, and letting everybody know the importance of all these iconic buildings that lie along the shoreline. So yes, they would have said that, you know, ideas like maybe having a cafe or a type of bars inside it. A playground was mentioned, but obviously we have Mally's playground there in the shorefront, so it's not I suppose a priority, but definitely, you know, it should be used, and you know, we can, I suppose, probe them further and see what they would like to do with it.
Extremely valuable to this town.
Hopeful. Yeah, hopeful that something will turn up nice. Because a pity it's such a big building, it has such history. I would be hopeful that something will come of it, that people can go there, maybe just not for music now, but just to visit it and see something different.
Oh, huge potential for Rathmullan.
Iconic.
What's the word that I could use to put on it? I just can't think of it.
I think multi-purpose or something.
Oh well, yes, that would be my yeah.
Iconic. Yeah, it's there. You see pictures of Rathmullan, and no matter what the weather, the sun, the rain, the snow, the battery just stands there on guard, and I think it's a fabulous building. It's silent, but it's solid there.